In an MMORPG, immersion is everything. When I log into an MMO, I want to feel like I'm being transported into another world. I want to get lost in the game and truly feel like I'm a part of it. Immersion is largely responsible for creating that MMO magic. That moment where you lose yourself in the game only to come to much later and realize that you've been at it for hours without even noticing. I think just about anyone who's played an MMORPG has experienced this at one time or another. I'm not just talking about the game being addicting though. What I refer to as MMO magic is the feeling of being truly immersed in the game world in which you are playing. You assume your character's identity and adventure, creating experiences and meeting new friends. For a game to be immersive, it needs to be believable. Not in the strictest terms, of course, this is a fantasy world after all, but the way the world is presented needs to feel alive. The developers at Visionary Realms understand that creating an immersive experience is crucial to an MMO. They want players to feel like they belong in the world they created for them. This is especially important in an MMORPG. It shouldn't feel like you're just playing any ordinary video game. In fact, it shouldn't feel much like playing a game and more like living in a world. So let's talk about what ways Pantheon will offer you an immersive MMO experience. Let's start with the environment. The term PvE has largely been defined as players versus AI-controlled monsters, but when you look at the literal translation, what it means is player versus environment. Visionary Realms is taking this term literally and creating an experience where the environment itself will present its own set of situations and challenges, not just the monsters that inhabit them. This is a fantastic concept as it adds an entire extra layer of dimension to the game. Immersion largely boils down to having game mechanics that just make sense. The addition of this environment system does just that. Imagine a game you've played before where you're adventuring in an icy, barren tundra environment. Did it matter that you were wearing an entire suit of metal armor? What about perilous storms or a lava-filled volcano? Realistically, these environments would create some serious challenges to the heroes that braved them. While we don't know the full extent of the environmental system just yet, what we do know is quite promising. We've seen examples that range from storms with perilous tornadoes that players will have to avoid, to areas that are void of any magic that may silence or prevent any spell casting from within that area, as well as having areas that will constantly drain your mana. A proper realization of this mechanic could be a real game changer, not only in forms of immersion, but in MMORPG development as well. Since we're on the topic of the game's environment, a great addition to this mechanic is just how the world will be presented to us visually, particularly in how it's illuminated. Pantheon will feature dynamic lighting, and while the idea of dynamic lighting in a video game isn't entirely a new concept, the way it's being implemented is going to be fantastic for the game's immersion. I've played quite a few MMOs where at night the sky gets darker, but the world itself is still rather illuminated. Your field of view might decrease a bit, but you can still largely see what's around you with little issue. In Pantheon, nighttime will come with its own challenges. The devs have already told us that when it gets dark in this game, it's going to get really dark. Players will be required to employ the use of torches and other means of light if they're going to want to continue their adventures after hours. We also see this being a factor when exploring some dungeons. We got to see an early example of this during the last live stream. How torches and their management will work just yet has yet to be released. It will be interesting to see what other means of illumination come to light. Pun intended. Having certain classes that can magically create light sources could prove to be a valuable addition to the party. In Pantheon, the NPCs will have their own dispositions and behaviors. We will also see dynamic encounters in the game. To quote the developer's example, this means that your group could kill key mobs around a hill giant camp that would trigger the invasion of a rival faction of storm giants. Your group's weakening of the hill giants' defenses caused the storm giants to launch their assault. These types of scenarios will make the world that much more real. In addition to these dynamic encounters, the NPCs themselves will have their own sets of scripted behaviors and dispositions. For example, let's say that you encounter a monster with an innate fear of fire. This enemy will react differently to the threat of fire, such as torches or spells, using a different set of actions and abilities than in a normal situation. Of course, this is just one example, and there are many different dispositions that will be given to the various inhabitants of Terminus. Let's talk about maps. Pantheon's UI will not have any kind of mini-map. Any in-game maps will be a more basic layout of zone borders and continental boundaries rather than containing detailed representations of all the little points of interest in a zone. The devs want to encourage you to explore and make discoveries of your own. Stumbling upon an ancient ruin full of mystery is so much more enjoyable and interesting than seeing it on your map and deciding if you want to go check it out or not. This approach makes perfect sense in a game where immersion is key. Why in any fantasy game would a character have a fully detailed PDA at their disposal? Encouraging the player to explore will also allow players to really make the most of the perception system, as they will have the opportunity to find quests as they adventure rather than going from quest hub to quest hub. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Visionary Realms' decision to remove instancing from the game almost entirely, reserving instances for special quests and situations. Why would they do this? Instancing breaks immersion. When you separate players into their own little worlds, you destroy any potential for interaction with other members of the community. When you go into a dungeon in Pantheon, for example, let's just say a massive cave filled with trolls, your party may not be the only adventurers there. These other players may have a substantial impact on how your group proceeds with their plans. Maybe they help you out by informing you of a very powerful patrolling baddie that could wipe out your entire party. You then propose that your groups team up to take out this threat so that you can both level a little more safely. Or it could go the other way. Maybe you're both after a certain boss and both of your groups must compete for the kill. Whether you like this system or not, it's fantastic for the game's immersion. Sure, at times it may put a wrench in your group's plans, but it will put you in situations where you'll have to interact with other members of the community, and that's what Pantheon is all about. There are so many things about Pantheon's design for creating the most immersive experience possible. Believe me, I could go on and on. These are just a few of the examples that show just how far VR is taking things when it comes to immersion. When you log into Terminus, it's a very good bet that you'll find yourself lost in its wonder, and forget you're sitting in a comfy chair surrounded by empty Mountain Dew cans and Doritos. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments how important good immersion is to you in your MMOs. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like to show your support, and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my continuing coverage of Pantheon's development. Speaking of upcoming Pantheon videos, my next video will feature an interview with Ben Walters, the community manager of Visionary Realms. So be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on this exciting upcoming interview. You can also follow the channel on Twitter at BrainBeanGaming, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.